we're very, very happy to have with us Jason Gulya, Jason is our second keynote, and I'm particularly grateful to him for making the time and juggling between family and being here. Jason, welcome. You can probably speak. That's correct. Let's see.
Yes, it should all be
Yes.
good. You can hear me, right?
We can hear your technology. So you can probably start trying to share the slides if you have slides just to see if it works. And I'm going to say that Jason is professor of English and applied media at Berkeley College. He teaches writing, AI-powered communication, and the humanities. He's a keynote speaker and AI consultant for many colleges and universities. And his approach to AI has been featured in many, many places, including Insider and Forbes. So delighted to have you here. And if you can share slides, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I had the like quintessential Zoom moment when I was going in and I was good to go. I had all of my tech ready, and then it had to update it. So and
Okay.
it had to do that. So yes, it was fun. And so actually before showing my slides, I have some things I want to go through. But I do want to start off with everyone here. I want to start off with the chat because I want this to feel a little bit less like I'm talking at you and a little bit more conversational, which I think makes sense because the whole thing is going to be about human connection and what that is, what that increasingly feels like, I think. So it'll be part kind of anecdotal, part sort of research, will be kind of jumbled all together. Well, right now, just take a second in the chat and you can write in as many answers as you want. So when you connect with another human, right? Like you really connect, right? You feel like you're working together, like your minds are one in a weird sort of way. How does that feel? What emotion pops into your mind when you really connect with another person? You can connect however you want. It can be in person, it can be online, but just take a second in the chat, write some emotions in there, and just I want to see what people feel when they
I
connect with another human
absolutely,
being.
just to say the chat's at least disabled. You see, it's a bit inhuman, this human connection, but the
Yeah.
Q&A is enabled. So please type in the Q&A.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we can do it that way. That works. Yeah, so if you pop it in there, it'll probably blow
We
up the
have the
Q&A, but
first
that's okay.
answers coming in.
All right, yeah, now I'm seeing them. Delight, joy, warm, happy. Yeah, so joy, mostly very positive, right? Lack of loneliness, excitement. All right, cool. Then anonymous, I don't know who wrote this, but not an emotion, but this feeling, a theory of resonance. Awesome. So it's kind of this bring from sociology. Joyful, flow, energized. Right? So a lot of the emotions here are very positive, right? That there's this feeling that a lot of us get, or maybe we don't get, right? And I'm not judging any of these emotions either, but there's something that happens in a certain way when we connect with a human. So now I'm going to give you another one. All right, so we'll blow up the chat just for like or the I guess the Q&A just for a little bit, and then I'll shift it going forward. When you use AI, what emotions pop into your head, if any? So you use ChatGPT, use Claude, whatever it is. Do emotions pop up? And if so, what emotions? And your answer can be neutral. That's fine too. All right, and we might feel the emotions start to shift a little bit. Frustration, wonder, amazed. Yeah, so Robert just says could be a huge rabbit hole. I could spend hours doing it. There's something that's increasingly addictive about it. Angry, right? Wonder, sometimes worry, like Luciana, that's Luciana's answer. So it kind of makes that shift, right? Sometimes it starts off one way and it really very quickly moves into another. Curiosity, right? These are words that didn't really come out when I asked about human to human connection, right? They feel like they're a slightly, or actually a very different thing. Intrigued, right? So a lot of these might very well relate to the human to human connection, but I think there's a reason they come out when we think about how we interact with AI. All right, I'm going to just kind of keep that there because I want that to really be center stage in some ways. And I'll come back to this feeling about the feelings that percolate when we interact with humans and how that connects to the classroom. And it did let me do it before. I did test it out. So I'm going to see if it'll let me share my screen now. It should. All right, and you can see my screen, right?
Yep.
All right, cool. And so now I'm going to go in and I'm going to kind of give my own angle, my own ideas, and I'm hoping that this furthers the conversation. And in the interest of furthering conversation on the screen right now, and if you want, I can pop my link into the chat after, but on the screen is the QR code for my virtual business card. So if you scan that, and again, I'll give everyone the link later and I'll show the QR code again at the end of the presentation. If you want to reach out to me, you can scan that QR code and you will have my email, you will have my phone number, you will have links to my social media. I'm on LinkedIn and everything like that if you want to have them. So if you want to reach out to me, you are more than welcome to do so. Actually, I invite it. I would love to talk to you. I would love this to actually be, if you want it to be, the start of a human connection, the start of a conversation. So, and again, I'll put that on at the very end, but if you want to reach out to me, if you want to talk, if you're teaching and you're just struggling with something or you want to have a back and forth, please feel free to reach out to me. And as that's there, just to give people a few more seconds, in case you want to scan it, I'll give a little bit additional context. And Vlad really helped me out with this already, but I'm in the classroom. I'm professor of English and applied media. So I'm always teaching 5 to 6 courses at the same time. And I typically have, 100+ students. So I think a lot about how AI is affecting the way that we connect with each other. Right. In good ways and bad ways. I think that I'm going to leave that as an open question, that there are good and bad effects of this technology in terms of human connection. So I'm very much in the classroom practicing and I test things out. And I'm going to try to bring to this presentation, I think will become clear in sort of a weird way in a few slides, but I try to bring experiments into my classroom and I bring students along with me. They're also experimenting, they're also playing. And so I try to make things as dynamic, and I'll try to do out this presentation as well. I'm going to start off by saying this, and I'm not going to comment on it. I'm just going to let it sit. All right, I'm going to come back to it. Don't worry. I'm just going to say no AI was used to create this presentation. And that's it. All right, I'm just going to let it sit there. Oh, it didn't reorder. That's okay. All right, so I do apologize for this. I am going to give you a quote, and it's a little bit on the lengthy side. Now, I promise I'm going to come back to it. It is a framework for thinking about AI and human connection. So I was thinking the other day about how to sort of describe technology and how to think about AI, not just as its own thing, but as part of a larger technology. And I went back to something that I read years ago and I hadn't thought of. And then yesterday it popped into my head and I couldn't get it out of it. And so I want to share it with you. And again, this is the only quote I'm going to read. It's the only big text thing I'm going to give you. So this is from Sherry Turkle, who was writing in 2015. And that's part of the point. This is from years and years ago. And before anyone or many of us were really thinking about generative AI. This is what she wrote. We're talking all the time. We text and post and chat. We may even begin to feel more at home in the world of our screens. Among family and friends, among colleagues and lovers, we turn to our phones instead of each other. We readily admit we would rather send an electronic message or mail than commit to a face-to-face meeting or a telephone call. This new mediated life has gotten us into trouble. Face-to-face conversation is the most human and humanizing thing we do. Fully present to one another, we learn to listen. It's where we develop the capacity for empathy. It's where we experience the joy of being heard, of being understood. And conversation advances self-reflection, the conversations with ourselves. And you see there's this kind of doubling. So there's an outside conversation, you talk to another person, and there's also an internal conversation. The conversations with ourselves that are the cornerstone of early development and continue throughout life. But these days, we find ways around conversation. So I'm sorry, I know that took me a minute or so to read that, but I really want that framework. And there's a lot here that I think can affect the way that we talk about AI and what it's doing to human connection, which here is conversation, right? For Sherry Turkle, conversation is human connection, right? It's the foundation of how we reflect. It's the foundation of how we connect with another human. And so the big thing I want to pick out of this is this phrase, this new mediated life. That seems really relevant right now, even though this was written, so it was published 9 years ago. And one of the things that we've seen with generative AI is more and more ways that our life can be mediated. It goes through something else. There's so now few moments when we're connecting kind of directly with another person, right? That's increasingly kind of the minority of our lives. And now a lot of us are connecting, as we are right now, through screens, through computers, through AI programs, through avatars, right? You can go and clone yourself very quickly in a few minutes and just have that clone do things for you, right? It can speak for you. It can look like you. And now it can be video instead of just image. And so there are all these more and more ways of mediating our lives. So I want to think a little bit about how the classroom fits into that. And I had a moment a couple days ago when I thought about how the classroom is set up and has been set up for a while. And I was explaining it to myself. I very much had a conversation with myself. And then I tried to think about it visually, like the classroom. So the college classes, when we're being lectured or we have information that's being delivered to us, how would I explain that? How would I describe that visually? This was my first attempt. This is what I started with. All right. And again, I did not use any AI for any of this. So I'm going to give you my own kind of messy, weird, but also undeniably human, I think, in some ways, images. So here, I tried to think about how in that classroom, the teacher was the center. They're the center of attention. They're standing up. They're the expert. It is the sage on the stage model when they are there primarily to show the students a model expert and also deliver content, right? That's kind of the double job of this teacher. And in the college space where I am, so I'm a professor, this is very much still the standard. But I looked at this. I actually did it this morning. I woke up at about 6 this morning and I looked at this image and it felt wrong. It felt inaccurate. And the reason it felt inaccurate was because I had Sherry Turkle on my mind. I couldn't get her out of it. And then this morning, at 6 a.m., just when my kids were getting up, I took out my iPad and I redrew it. Right? I just did it again. I gave it a second attempt because there's something that was irking me about it, something that just didn't feel right, something I was missing. So I redid it. And this is what I ended up with. Because I said to myself, I'm missing mediation. I'm missing where information is going through, right? Because I just have that giant circle. And so I redrew it. And so what I'm trying to do here is show how everything comes back to the teacher. So we often don't see in a lot of these classrooms really honest exchanges between students. Right? Often the student will participate it goes through a teacher. They say, good job, bad job, whatever the feedback is, and then they pass it off. So think about that traditional classroom discussion where you have a teacher or professor who's maybe they're standing on a stage, they get a comment from a student, they give immediate feedback, and they pass it off. Maybe they ask for another question from another student. And so the teacher there is very much the mediator, right? Technology is just one form of mediating our lives. Teachers, experts, professors are other ways of doing this. And AI fits into this. One of the things that I think about as we work AI into the classroom is whether we are centering the student. That is in many ways the goal, but this is what a lot of us want to do, or if we're creating something different. Creating something like this. This is one of my worries, right? And I think this would be huge and really, really influential in a bad way for human connection in the classroom. I worry that as we reform our classrooms and think about how AI fits into them, if we are putting AI at the center, so that we have students interacting with AI as the first thing that they do, and then they connect with another student. Right? So there, we're really seeing AI not empowering, not really enabling human connection, but simply replacing that teacher that was mediating all of the parts of the conversation. And so we have to think about this. There are ways that AI can help. And I'm going to actually end with that at the conclusion of today's presentation, that AI can certainly help human connection. But are we trying to create classrooms that actually do that, right? That's a potential for AI. Are we actually going to get to that potential? So that's all sort of abstract. These are a lot of my worries. And what I'm trying to do is trying to show you some of the ways that I imagine the classroom. And I will say too that the image I just showed, and I'll go back in a second. So this image is already sort of complicated, right, in terms of what I was trying to do. And again, I did not want to run it through an AI program. I'm fully aware that I could have, and it would have come out neater and more polished and everything. But I wanted the messiness of my humanity just on the page. And what I couldn't do, because I am limited and because I'm not a really talented drawer, I don't really think visually, even though I find it useful. It's even more complicated than that. Because mediation is not simply a thing. It's not like something is mediated or not mediated. It's a spectrum. It's a scale. Throughout our lives, throughout our day, we go through different ways that sometimes everything happens directly through technology, right? And sometimes it doesn't. Most of the time, it's sort of in the middle, right? It's a combination. It's sort of mediated, sort of not mediated. And there are all kinds of ways that even if we are in the same room talking to each other, we might have technology that is really a part of our interaction. So it's mediated. It's not necessarily in a good way or a bad way, but there is a lot of variation in terms of how technology or any form of mediation works into our lives. And I just couldn't get that visually because I'm limited. I don't know how to do it. I gave it an attempt or something. It didn't come with anything I liked. So I switched. I switched to simply explaining it as clearly as I could without drawing it. But that's all really big. That's really just very, very abstract. So I want to bring it down. I want to, and I'm going to I want to make sure I am. Give me 1 second. I want to share my audio. Hold on. All right, so it's not showing if I can share my audio. So hopefully it'll work. I'll go ahead and play it. Let me know if you're not hearing it on your end.
What's a professor to do to, like, I don't know, prevent cheating? How do you know your paper wasn't written by ChatGPT?
Yeah. I think the best way, the most effective way to fully prevent cheating
is to assume students are using AI and test for that knowledge in new and more challenging ways. So maybe that means we flip what used to happen at home, maybe that happens in school. But it also means if it's no longer sufficient for a student to write a basic paper or essay, because AI can do that, we need to raise the bar on what humans bring to the table. We did this with math. The calculator meant math got harder. So the same type of updating with AI. So maybe this looks like a teacher assigning, go write this essay at home with ChatGPT. Come back into school and with no AI system, improve it, critique it, argue against it. So we need to level the playing field the same way we've done with other technological innovations. And I know sometimes there's like these AI detectors that people try to use. We can't, those don't work. They're not very effective. They can actually penalize people who have English as a second language. And even OpenAI, the maker of ChatGPT, pulled their detection tool off the market. So instead of playing whack-a-mole and trying to spy on who's using AI, we really need to adopt it and prepare for the future.
All right, so I'm going to hop out of my shared screen, and I do hope that was, you could hear that. Were you able to hear that, Vlad? Did that come across? Okay, awesome. I think they just switched the setup a little bit. So I'm going to come out of my shared screen. So go into the Q&A or chat if that's enabled. What do you think? Throw some thoughts into the chat, into the Q&A. I'll check both right now. What are your thoughts about the exercise that she gives out as an option? Yeah, so do something. So Genevieve says she does something similar with her undergraduates. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know if people are able to pop things into. All right, cool. Yeah, Steven says the speaker was spot on. Learning outcomes need to change, right? Our approaches need to change. Awesome. Good. Robert mentions, which I think is so key. It seems like a good option, but it comes from the negative perspective of preventing cheating, right? Should we do that? Right? She has that very kind of strange segue, right? Here's the only way to prevent cheating. Here's an activity. Should we come from that mindset, right? Is that the best way to approach it, or is that just her way of, bringing people along with her? Good. And Saba mentioned Classroom Sans AI, peer-to-peer discussions. All right. So I'm going to give you my own perspective, and please feel free to write in the Q&A. You can keep them coming. I'll see them on my end. But I think this makes perfect sense. And I don't know how many times I've heard this activity put out there, right? That you can have a student write with AI on their own. I've actually seen many teachers just recommending a student write entirely with AI. So just hand it over to something like ChatGPT or Claude, right? Not even focusing on reprompting things like that, but just write it with that, come in and critique it. Now, here is my worry. My worry is whether that is empowering the student, whether it is putting them at the center and focusing on human connection, or if it is low-key marginalizing that student. And this is something that I throw out there as an open question. I haven't made up my mind yet. One of the things I read recently, I try to look at AI from all these different angles, and I was reading an article from a writing professor, and they made a claim. They said writing is not a really important skill right now. That AI is going to turn our students and all of us eventually from writers to editors. We're not going to really focus on creating things word by word, sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph. We're going to focus on generating something with AI and then editing from there. And I really worry about that. I think that there is something about the process of creating that is just foundational to how we connect through writing. Right? And so I understand the activity. I worry about whether it's actually privileging human connection or if it's starting to marginalize that. And I think that there are a lot of examples like this, a lot of activities that do just that. I'm going to give you another example. And this one might sound a little weird. I'm going to give you a little bit of context and kind of walk it through a little bit. Grammarly. if you use Grammarly or any process like that to help yourself out and find errors, right? Find spelling errors, find ungrammatical sentences, anything like that, there's a distance happening. So Grammarly, for a lot of us, myself included, I see Grammarly as a way to just help myself out. And it is, right? It is a program to help me create a more polished, finished product. But it is also a mediator. It's also something that, and I make this trade, in exchange for it helping me out, it creates a distance to my writing. And one of the research, some of the research actually shows that programs like Grammarly can help students, but it can also flatten out student voice. It can really focus on a westernized perspective. There are all ways in which, in using these programs, and Grammarly right now is ChatGPT. ChatGPT is actually baked into it. You can use Grammarly to generate an entire paper end to end if you wanted to. It's not very difficult. It just takes a few clicks. And so we have this increasing distance to the thing that we're creating, right? So Grammarly is also a mediator, right? It's creating that. And so it does get in the way of how we can use writing to connect with others. So there are so many programs like this, right? So many programs that take that first step, right? So a student might go and use Grammarly, and it looks more polished, but it also feels a little bit less like a student. So I posted about this recently. I wrote something about LinkedIn, and I tried to think about what this means. What this means if we have this increasing distance where there's a bit of a gap between the writer and what they wrote. And I'll give you some context here. I was talking to a professor recently, and we were talking about AI, and it is a writing professor, and they stopped me. They hit pause, and they said to me this sentence: my students are starting to forget what writing means. Because the student used ChatGPT and told the professor, I worked with ChatGPT, I redirected it, I didn't actually put any words in the final essay, but I wrote it. It is my thing. And I posted about that and what I saw happening there. And one of my friends, Dr. Nick Jackson, who was great, I highly recommend following him if you're not already, wrote this to me. And he wrote, not writing, authoring. There is little writing that exists, and arguably there has been little for a while. Even spell-checked work, Grammarly assisted, is truly not your own writing. It is a hybrid form. The degree of assistance is depicted by an assistance spectrum from very little to complete copy and a paste without reading from a bot. This is neither a damning comment nor a celebration of this reality. It's just an observation. Cuts off a little bit at the end. So, oh, it actually put out of order. Hold on. All right, so close your eyes. It hardly does. So I'm going to change that first slide. So I started off by saying no AI was used to create this presentation. And just let it sit there. Now I'm going to put an asterisk next to it. Nick has convinced me to change that to I think, I'm not sure, maybe. One of the things that is happening right now is with this technology, it is disrupting us to the extent that we need to really rethink how we're interacting with technology. And part of that is being open to this kind of ambiguity. If we are not connecting with humans, if we are not using this technology as a way to really, really connect with others, this is going to be hard. I think human connection is going to be foundational for thinking about how we exist, how we work, how we thrive in a world where we don't have easy answers. That I might be tempted to say, no AI was used to create this presentation. I'll be honest, I don't know. I didn't use ChatGPT. I didn't use an image generator. I didn't use anything like Grammarly. But I'm not giving you anything directly. It's all mediated. It's mediated through my iPad. It's mediated through, I actually did some of it on my phone. It's mediated through my computer that I'm delivering it to you right now. And it's becoming increasingly difficult for me and my students to figure out what is AI, and I'll put that in giant scare quotes, and what is not AI. And that's that kind of ambiguity, that kind of questioning, I think is where human connection is going to really, really help us out. It's going to become necessary. And I'm sorry for the wrong ordering of that. I don't know how that happened. It's supposed to be, and I'll skip back. It's supposed to be right after here. All right, so what am I doing? How am I starting to approach this? I do think that we need to have this revisioning of the modern classroom that puts the student and human connection front and center. And I'm trying a couple of things right now. The first is really leaning into debate and discussion. So one of the things I did last week was I got rid of the final presentation. In my writing class, so it's an introduction to writing class, for years, I've had students come in and present 3 to 5 minutes on their topic, and they would take Q&A, they talk to me, and then they'd sit. And it was meant to empower them. It was meant to give them a space to really kind of own their voice. But I thought about if that's actually privileging human connection. And I decided it wasn't. I decided that with that sort of segmenting, so that a student talks, we chat for a little bit, I say something, and it goes on to the next person. The connection wasn't happening. It wasn't being brought front and center. And so I got rid of the presentations, and instead I did a Socratic fishbowl. So basically, I gave them a topic of conversation, and here it was just introduce us to your topic. And I rearranged the desk. I got them in a circle, right? So this is not a new strategy. And I shut up. I didn't talk. I gave them about half an hour. I gave them a guiding question, and I let them do it. I just let them go off. I observed. I was not a part of the conversation. I didn't respond. I didn't respond verbally or as much as I could with facial expressions. I simply let them do their thing. I observed. I was someone in the background. Yep, I'm sure I had some effect on it, but I try to make my students really take the lead and be front and center. And it was awkward for a little bit, but that awkwardness is it. That awkwardness is part of human connection. And I fear that we're getting rid of it. I wanted it to be front and center if we could make it front and center. And it was really, really helpful for my students. It was transformative for some of them. Several of them came to me after class and said they'd never been given an opportunity to do that before. They'd never been given a chance to have someone say, here's a thing, here's a project, here's a question. Do it. Do it with no guidance. Do it without me really being a part of the conversation. I didn't redirect things. If they went off the rails, I would let them go off the rails. If they were silent, I would let them be silent. And it really, really helped them out. It brought human connection and the awkwardness and weirdness and the beauty of it and the empowering nature, all of it, good and bad, front and center for them to think about. The other thing I do in my classes now is I try to make it very clear when we're shifting between centers. One of the problems with thinking, or one of the problems that a lot of people have when they think about the classroom is they think about it as a monolith. They think about it as either student-centered or faculty-centered or something else. That's just not true. When we teach, there are all these different ways that we move between centers. Some things, yes, like that debate, that discussion, student-centered. I give them a chance, do your thing, talk about what you want to talk about, redirect, work together, cooperate, anything like that. Some things really privilege or really benefit from that. Others maybe aren't as student-centered. Maybe there are moments when I do have to be center stage and I have to do some course correction if course correction is necessary, right? And so I don't think it's a matter of getting rid of something like teaching-centered situations. It's a matter of making sure that they are purposeful and that they fit into a larger learning infrastructure, a larger ecosystem. And that's what matters to me. And making it clear to students when we're shifting, right? When are they the center? When am I the center? When is it a combination, right? When is no one really the center? There are a lot of times in my classrooms when no one's the center of attention. It's just shared, right? We work together. And the other thing that I'm playing with, and I'm going to give a very quick version of this. I know I've been talking for about 33 minutes, and I do want to wrap up, and people can kind of come in. I kind of focus a little bit less on Q&A since just to streamline that a little bit. But I've been thinking a lot about process-based teaching. I think that one of the reasons that we lose human connection in the classroom is that we focus on product over process. And we say to students, write me a paper or give me a presentation. And I just don't think product-based teaching creates the level of human connection that we want center stage in the classroom. And I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to make this short. My point isn't to go through the entire thing. It's to give you a sense of one thing that I do to bring human connection into my classroom. So in my literature class, for years, just taught a final paper. I would give them some topics. They would choose a story. They would analyze it, and they would give me a final paper, whatever it is. And last semester, I got rid of it. I deleted the final paper because I felt like it wasn't allowing for human connection. It wasn't allowing for students to really show how their minds work. And this is very much a work in progress. I actually want to bring human connection even more front and center in future versions of it. But I got rid of that paper. And instead, I had students focus on a reading portfolio. And I'm just going to give you the bare notes. And if you want this, I will pop it in the chat. You can take it, you can revise it, you can copy it. Doesn't matter to me. So very similar skills, but all process oriented. So stage number 1, let me know what your name is. And so students were told to go through this, and every time they saw red font like this, put in your answer. So put in your name, put in your story, all that stuff. Very easy for step 1. Then step 2, free write, right? This is where it gets really into the process, right? And I tell them, try not to use AI, because for free writing, it really should be you as much as you can. So free write about the story. Then I have them perform a close reading. So copy and paste a passage, usually a paragraph or 2, mark it up with comments, right? So use the Microsoft comment function, just put the ideas out there, quantity over quality. I don't care if they're good. Right, just put them out there. Just get the thoughts out there. And so the idea here is to really bring out, as long as they embrace it, I kind of work with them on this, that human aspect. It's not about polish. It's about messiness. I think human connection at its core is about messiness. And messy can be good, bad, neutral, anything like that. But I want to bring that out. I don't want to lose that, because without that, I don't think we're connecting in the way that we really, really could be. And then stage 4, kind of see how this works, right? List takeaways, so boil it down. And then step 5, I give them a chatbot. So this is what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out if we can use AI to bring out that process even more. I do think that in a certain way, AI can help us really understand our humanness quite a bit more, and can therefore hopefully help with human connection. But I think we have to be very purposeful with it. So here I have students debating, right? And I talk about how debate can be very empowering for my students. I have them debating with a particular chatbot, and I have them pop in the entire transcript. So I get to really see the messiness. I get to see behind the scenes, because one of the obstacles with human connection in the classroom is that students feel like everything has to be polished. Everything has to be neat. Everything has to look good. And I try to create assignments that do not do that, that push against that. Because again, I want to see that messiness. I want to see that work in the background. And I'll, again, at the end, after, in the next minute, I will pop the link to that in the comments. And again, feel free to take it, or I can send it to Vlad too, if he has a way to send it to you. But you're welcome to steal it, revise it, and everything else. And thank you for listening to me. Again, I put the QR code on there. Feel free to scan it if you have a second now, and you can reach out to me. Again, it's my email, my phone number. Feel free to take this as an invitation to connect with me, talk with me. I'm more than happy to have a back and forth. And thank you very much. And let me know if you have any questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jason. And a round of applause. You can imagine all the applause that would fit into a physical room. You can experience those. Absolutely. I think a lot of people in the chat wanted to see if they could get a version of the document. You can humanly connect to Jason, or Jason can send it to us. No problem. We have time for a few
So if I
questions.
pop it in the chat, can people see it or no?
In the Q&A, probably you can
use
pop
the
a
chat.
link.
You can send yourself to everyone. It's just no one is allowed to reply. I'm sorry. We can't enable that function,
Okay.
but you should be able to
Got it.
access the chat. Yes.
Yep. Awesome.
The chat is set up that way, not by us, by the way. These were the technical conditions, and we tried to change them, but unfortunately. So we have time only for a few questions. There have been a lot of amazing comments and deep reflections, but I'm going to pick up an early one as well from Luciana, who said, look, is education really focused on human connection or more on transmission and reproduction and the production of knowledge? So in that sense, if you put AI into the mix, does it escalate that version of that problem that we focus again, maybe going back to the product or the knowledge? What would you say to that?
So here's how I think about it. AI scales things. That's it, right? So it has the ability, I think, to really have us, take a different approach to thinking about human connection, because I think you're right. In most classrooms, human connection is not the center of attention. It is about transmitting information. It's about memorizing. It's about just learning content, and it really shouldn't be. And I think in this current age, that's become more and more obvious. I think AI, I don't think has really broken anything yet. Not big, or not that I can think of, but it will get us, I hope, if we really think about it, to rethink things we should have been doing all along. Human connection should always have been front center in the classroom. And AI, it can scale that. It can allow us to really do that, or it can scale bad teaching. And we've already seen this. If you go and you take a lot of those AI in education courses, right, that are supposed to transform education, and you take it and it's text, lectures, and quiz, right? The exact opposite of what it is supposed to be doing. And you see that all the time. So AI can very easily scale pad pedagogy. And this is where we have to be very purposeful with it. So I think it can go either way. My worry is that if we have a lot of AI programs being used that aren't developed for education, that's what's going to happen. A lot of lecture-based courses, a lot of quizzes, and so human connection goes out the window. And again, I think almost all of those AI and education courses, that's what they do.